Chapter 1. The Night That Changed Everything. The dimly lit room buzzed with the murmur of powerful voices, each one belonging to a leader of the underworld. Smoke curled in the air, and the scent of expensive whiskey mingled with the tension of unspoken rivalries. Kai, known as the Phantom King, leaned against the bar, his sharp eyes scanning the room. His reputation as the second most powerful leader in the underworld was well earned. Calculating, ruthless, and untouchable, he was a force to be reckoned with. But tonight he felt out of place. It wasn't his style to attend these gatherings, where alliances were as fragile as glass and enemies lurked behind false smiles. Still, he was here. The alcohol helped dull his irritation, but not by much. Rough night? Kai turned his head sharply, meeting the gaze of a stranger. The man's presence was magnetic, tall, broad-shouldered, and exuding an aura of authority that rivaled Kai's own. His tailored, black suit clung to his frame, and his sharp jawline was accentuated by the soft glow of the chandelier above. "Who's asking?" Kai replied, his voice cold and guarded. The stranger smirked, unfazed by the hostility. "Call me Jace." His deep voice was smooth, almost hypnotic. Kai's brow furrowed. There was something familiar about him, but he couldn't place it. Shrugging off the uneasy feeling, he downed his drink and turned back to the bar. "You don't belong here," Jace said, leaning closer. "Not like this." Kai's eyes narrowed. "And what would you know about that?" Jace chuckled, the sound low and rich. "More than you think." The conversation that followed was a game of wits, each man testing the other. Jace's charm was disarming, and Kai found himself relaxing despite his better judgment. They talked about power, loyalty, and the burdens of leadership. Kai was surprised by how much he revealed. Something about Jace made him let his guard down. By the end of the night, they were no longer strangers, they were two men, sharing a connection neither of them fully understood. "Let's get out of here," Jace said, his voice softer now. Kai hesitated, but found himself nodding. He wasn't sure if it was the alcohol or Jace's piercing gaze that made him agree. Either way, he followed Jace out of the room, leaving behind the noise and the stares of curious onlookers. The hotel room was luxurious, its large windows offering a breathtaking view of the city skyline. Kai stood by the window, feeling the weight of Jace's gaze on him. "You're staring," Kai muttered. "I can't help it," Jace replied, stepping closer. "You're beautiful." Kai turned to face him, his cheeks flushing slightly. He wasn't used to compliments, especially not from someone like Jace. "Shut up," Kai said, but his voice lacked its usual bite. Jace laughed softly and reached out, brushing a strand of hair from Kai's face. "You're incredible, Kai. Strong, untouchable. But there's more to you, isn't there?" Kai opened his mouth to reply, but Jace's lips were on his before he could speak. The kiss was intense, filled with a hunger that took Kai by surprise. He didn't resist. The rest of the night was a blur of heat and passion, a momentary escape from the harsh realities of their world. Kai woke up the next morning with a pounding headache and a sinking feeling in his chest. He turned over, but the other side of the bed was empty. Jace was gone, leaving only the faint scent of cologne on the pillow. "Damn it," Kai muttered, running a hand through his hair. Something about the night didn't sit right with him. He couldn't shake the feeling that Jace had been hiding something, but before he could dwell on it, he received a message from his second-in-command. "Urgent meeting, rival factions on the move." Kai sighed, pushing aside his thoughts. There was no time for distractions, not in his line of work. Little did he know that one night would change everything, and the man who disappeared into the night was far more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. Chapter 2. The Phantom King's Revelation. The meeting room was a stark contrast to the opulence of the night before. Dimly lit and cold, it was filled with Kai's most trusted lieutenants. Maps of territory lines covered the table, and voices rose as strategies clashed. Kai sat at the head of the table, his face a mask of composure, but inside, he was a storm. The memory of Jace haunted him. The man had been unlike anyone Kai had ever met. Dangerous, charming, and unsettlingly familiar. "Phantom King," his second-in-command Eli called, snapping Kai out of his thoughts. "What?" Kai asked, his tone sharp. "The Red Vipers are encroaching on our southern borders. We need to act before they get too bold." Kai leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Deploy reinforcements to the south. Show them we're not to be tested. The room fell silent as his command was acknowledged. No one dared to question him. As the meeting adjourned, Eli approached him. Are you all right? You seem distracted. Kai's jaw tightened. I'm fine. Handle the reinforcements. I'll deal with the Vipers personally if they don't back off. Eli nodded but didn't press further. He knew better than to pry. That night, Kai returned to his penthouse, exhaustion settling into his bones. He poured himself a glass of whiskey and stared out at the city lights. The faint nausea he'd been feeling all day returned, stronger this time. He clenched his jaw, refusing to acknowledge it. He didn't have time for weakness. But as the days passed, the symptoms worsened. Fatigue, dizziness, and a strange, persistent queasiness that made even the smell of his favorite foods unbearable. Eli noticed the change. You need to see a doctor, he insisted one afternoon. Kai scowled. I don't have time for that. You don't have time to collapse in the middle of a fight either. Eli shot back, surprising Kai with his boldness. Reluctantly, Kai agreed. The clinic was discreet, catering to the elite, and those with secrets to keep. Kai sat in the sterile room, his patients wearing thin. The doctor entered with a clipboard, his expression unreadable. Phantom King, I have your results. Kai nodded, urging him to continue. The doctor hesitated before speaking. You're pregnant. Time seemed to freeze. Kai stared at the doctor, his mind struggling to process the words. That's impossible, he said, his voice low and dangerous. The doctor remained calm. It's rare, but not unheard of in certain cases. Given your symptoms, it's the only explanation. Kai's hands clenched into fists. His mind raced back to that night with Jace. The warmth of his touch, the intensity of his gaze, and the unsettling feeling that had lingered ever since. Leave, Kai commanded. The doctor bowed and exited, leaving Kai alone with the weight of the revelation. Later that evening, Kai paced his penthouse, his thoughts a chaotic mess. He couldn't believe it. Pregnant? Him? It was absurd, impossible, yet the evidence was undeniable. And then there was Jace, the man who had disappeared without a trace. A part of Kai wanted to dismiss him as a mistake, but another part couldn't shake the feeling that Jace was hiding something. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Come in, Kai barked. Eli entered, his expression serious. We've received a message. Kai raised an eyebrow. From who? Eli hesitated. The Mafia King. Kai froze. The name sent a chill down his spine. The Mafia King was the most powerful man in the underworld, a figure of legend, and a rival Kai had never met in person. What does he want? Eli handed him a letter sealed with an ornate crest. Kai tore it open and read the contents. Kai, we need to talk. You know where to find me. Jace. Kai's blood ran cold. Jace wasn't just a stranger, he was the Mafia King. And now everything made sense. Kai stood in the darkened room, the letter clutched in his hand. Anger and betrayal coursed through him. Jace had known who he was all along. He had orchestrated everything, the meeting, the drinks, the night they shared. And now Kai was carrying his child. But if Jace thought he could manipulate him, he was sorely mistaken. Kai's eyes burned with determination. He doesn't know who he's dealing with. The Phantom King was not a man to be controlled. Chapter 3. A Dangerous Reunion. Kai stood in front of the imposing mansion that served as the Mafia King's headquarters. It was an architectural fortress surrounded by guards who watched his every move. The letter burned in his pocket. Jace had summoned him like a pawn, but Kai was no one's plaything. Whatever game the Mafia King was playing, Kai would end it on his terms. As he approached the gates, one of the guards stepped forward. Phantom King, you're expected. Follow me. Kai didn't flinch, his sharp eyes scanning every detail. He didn't trust this man, this place, or this situation. But he needed answers. The grand hall was dimly lit, the air heavy with tension. At the far end of the room, Jace sat on a throne-like chair, exuding an aura of power that seemed to fill the space. Kai's fists clenched at the sight of him. Jace rose to his feet, a soft smile curving his lips. Kai, Jace said, his voice warm, almost tender. I'm glad you came. Kai's glare could have frozen fire. Spare me the pleasantries, I'm not here for games. Jace's smile faltered. I never meant to hurt you. Funny, Kai snapped, his voice laced with venom. Drugging me, sleeping with me, and disappearing counts as not hurting me in your twisted world? Jace sighed, stepping closer. Kai instinctively stepped back, the distance between them charged with unresolved tension. I had my reasons, Jace said softly. Kai scoffed. Reasons? That's the excuse of a coward. You didn't even have the decency to tell me who you really are. Jace's jaw tightened. I didn't want to scare you off. Scare me off? Kai's laugh was bitter. You don't know the meaning of fear. Jace held his gaze, his expression uncharacteristically vulnerable. You're right. I don't. Not until I met you. Kai froze, caught off guard by the sincerity in Jace's voice. I've been watching you for years, Jace admitted. Your strength, your brilliance. I admired you from afar, but I knew I could never approach you as the Mafia King. You'd see me as a threat, an enemy. And you thought lying to me was the solution? Kai spat. No, Jace said, his voice breaking slightly. It wasn't. I made a mistake, but I couldn't stay away from you, Kai. You're the one thing in this world I couldn't conquer. So I tried to bind you to me the only way I knew how. Kai's chest tightened as the pieces fell into place. Jace hadn't just wanted him. He had been obsessed. You're insane, Kai said, his voice trembling with anger. Maybe, Jace replied, stepping closer. This time, Kai didn't move away. But I'm also in love with you. Kai's heart pounded. He wanted to deny it, to scream at Jace for his betrayal, but a part of him, a small, treacherous part, believed him. Before Kai could respond, the doors burst open, and a group of armed men stormed in. Boss, we've got trouble, one of Jace's guards said, his voice urgent. Jace turned to face them, his demeanor shifting instantly from vulnerable to commanding and dangerous. What is it? The Red Vipers, they've surrounded the estate. Kai's eyes narrowed. The Red Vipers had been his problem too. Clearly, they'd decided to escalate. Jace glanced at Kai, his expression unreadable. Looks like we'll have to put our conversation on hold. Kai smirked, his hand moving to the dagger at his waist. Fine by me. Let's see if the Mafia King can actually fight. Jace's lips twitched into a grin. Tried to keep up, Phantom King. The two of them moved in perfect sync, stepping into the chaos outside. The battle was brutal. Gunfire and shouts echoed through the estate as Kai and Jace fought side by side. Kai's skill and precision were unmatched, and Jace's strength and strategy were equally impressive. Together, they were unstoppable. By the time the dust settled, the Red Vipers had been defeated, their forces retreating into the night. Kai stood in the middle of the carnage, blood staining his clothes. He turned to Jace, who was equally battered but alive. Not bad, Kai admitted begrudgingly. Jace chuckled, wiping blood from his lip. I could say the same about you. They stared at each other for a moment, the weight of their earlier conversation hanging between them. Kai broke the silence. This doesn't mean I forgive you. I know, Jace said quietly, but I'll do whatever it takes to earn that forgiveness. Kai didn't respond, but something in his expression softened. As the night wore on, Kai found himself alone in one of the estate's rooms, staring out at the moonlit sky. His hand instinctively went to his stomach, where a new life was growing, a life he hadn't planned for but couldn't ignore. Jace's voice echoed in his mind. You're the one thing I couldn't conquer. Kai sighed. For now, he would stay, not for Jace, but for himself, and the child they had created. But one thing was certain, the Mafia King had a long way to go before he could call Kai his. Chapter 4. Bound by Duty. Torn by Emotions. The quiet of the early morning enveloped the estate. Kai sat in the corner of the lavish guest room Jace had arranged for him, staring at the small plate of untouched food on the table. His appetite had been erratic lately, and the weight of his situation pressed on him like a storm cloud. His hand rested unconsciously on his stomach, where the faintest hint of a life was growing. It was surreal. Phantom King, the man feared by the underworld, was now carrying a child. His child. The knock on the door broke the silence. What is it? Kai called, his voice sharp. The door opened slowly, and Jace stepped inside. He was dressed more casually than Kai had ever seen, his dark shirt unbuttoned at the collar, giving him an almost human appearance. I thought we could talk, Jace said, closing the door behind him. Kai's glare was icy. I've said all I needed to say. Then let me speak, Jace replied, his tone softer than Kai expected. Please. Kai hesitated, then gestured for Jace to sit. He remained standing, watching Jace carefully, like a predator sizing up its prey. I won't defend what I did, Jace began, his voice steady but laced with regret. I know I crossed a line and I can't take it back. But I need you to understand. I didn't do it to hurt you. Kai scoffed. Drugging me and using me for your obsession doesn't count as hurting me? Jace flinched, but didn't look away. I thought, if I could bind you to me by making you pregnant, you'd give me a chance to show you how much you mean to me. You're the only person I've ever— Stop, Kai cut him off, his voice trembling with suppressed anger. Don't say you love me. Love doesn't manipulate, and it doesn't take away someone's choices. Jace bowed his head, and his hands clenched into fists. You're right. I was selfish. I am selfish. But everything I did was because I couldn't bear to lose you. Kai wanted to yell, to throw something, to make Jace feel the pain and confusion roiling inside him. But instead he turned away, his voice quiet. You already lost me the moment you made that choice. The room fell into a heavy silence. Jace broke it first. I don't deserve forgiveness, Kai. But I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn it if you'll let me. Kai turned back to him, his eyes sharp. You're not in control here, Jace. Whatever happens from now on, it'll be on my terms. Jace nodded, a glimmer of hope flickering in his gaze. I'll follow your lead, just don't shut me out completely. Kai didn't respond. He wasn't ready to promise anything. The following days passed in a tense truce. Jace gave Kai space, but his presence was constant, checking on him, ensuring his comfort, and even protecting him from the inevitable whispers among the estate's staff. Eli visited one evening, his expression as unreadable as always. You're staying? He asked after a long silence. For now, Kai replied. I need answers, and there's a child involved now. Eli nodded, understanding the weight of that decision. If you need anything at all, just say the word. Kai gave a rare, small smile. I know, thank you. It wasn't long before the calm was interrupted. Late one night, Jace burst into Kai's room, his usually calm demeanor replaced with urgency. The Red Vipers are moving again. They're targeting one of our key shipments. Kai stood immediately, his instincts kicking in. Where? Jace commanded. You're not going. Kai glared at him. Don't tell me what I can and can't do. You're pregnant, Jace said firmly. I can't risk your safety. Kai's eyes blazed. I've led armies, survived ambushes, and taken down empires. Don't think for a second that I'll let this stop me. Jace looked torn, but finally sighed. Fine. But you're staying close to me. No arguments. Kai smirked, grabbing his weapons. I wasn't planning on letting you out of my sight anyway, if you hadn't agreed with me. The mission was brutal. The Red Vipers were relentless, but Kai and Jace fought as if they'd been partners for years. Their movements were in perfect harmony. Kai's agility and precision complemented Jace's strength and strategy. By the time the battle ended, the Vipers had been crushed, their leader captured. Kai stood over the man, his dagger pressed to his throat. Give me one reason not to end you. The man sneered. You're not as strong as they say. The Phantom King, pregnant and hiding behind the Mafia King. Pathetic. Kai's grip tightened, fury boiling inside him. But before he could strike, Jace stepped forward, placing a steadying hand on his shoulder. You're better than him, Jace said quietly. Let him see what true strength looks like. Kai hesitated, then stepped back, his dagger lowering. Take him away, he ordered. As the guards dragged the man off, Kai turned to Jace. You're lucky I didn't kill him. Jace smiled. I never doubted you. For the first time in weeks, Kai felt a small crack in his armor. That night, back at the estate, Jace found Kai on the balcony, staring out at the stars. You did well today, Jace said softly. Kai didn't look at him. I don't need your approval. I know, Jace replied, stepping closer, but I'll keep giving it anyway. Kai finally turned to him, his expression unreadable. Don't think this changes anything. Jace nodded. I wouldn't dream of it. But as they stood in the quiet of the night, the distance between them seemed just a little smaller. Chapter 5. A Fragile Truce. The days following the battle passed with an uneasy sense of calm. Kai remained at the estate, partially out of necessity and partially because he hadn't yet decided his next move. Jace respected his boundaries, but his presence was constant, whether it was ensuring Kai had everything he needed or subtly offering protection during their rare, joint appearances in the estate's hallways. The whispers among the guards and staff had grown louder. They all knew Kai was here, and speculation about his condition had already begun, but none dared speak openly. The Phantom King's reputation was as fearsome as Jace's. Kai sat in the estate's library, a quiet sanctuary he had found in the sprawling mansion. He absent-mindedly ran a hand over his stomach, still flat but now an undeniable reality. He hated how vulnerable he felt. His body was changing, and the weight of responsibility pressed down on him. But more than that, he hated how Jace lingered in his thoughts, no matter how hard he tried to push him away. Kai. The voice startled him, but he didn't flinch. He turned to see Jace standing in the doorway, his usual confidence tempered by hesitation. "What do you want?" Kai asked, closing the book he had been pretending to read. "I wanted to check on you," Jace said, "and I thought we should talk." Kai narrowed his eyes but nodded for Jace to sit. Jace hesitated before speaking, his gaze fixed on Kai. "I know you're still angry with me, you have every right to be, but I meant what I said. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." Kai leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "You think a few words will fix everything?" "No," Jace admitted. "But actions speak louder, don't they?" Kai arched an eyebrow. "And what actions would those be?" Jace took a deep breath. "I've started dissolving the network I used to monitor you. I know it won't erase what I did, but it's a step toward earning your trust." Kai blinked, surprised. He hadn't expected that. "Why would you give up that advantage?" "Because you're not my enemy," Jace said simply. "You never were." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Kai studied Jace, searching for any sign of deceit, but all he saw was sincerity, and maybe a little fear. "I still don't trust you," Kai said finally. "I know," Jace replied, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "But I'll wait as long as it takes." That night, Kai found himself restless. He wandered through the estate, eventually ending up on the training grounds. The familiar rhythm of combat always helped him clear his mind. He grabbed a pair of daggers and began moving through his drills, each strike precise and fluid. But halfway through he faltered. A wave of dizziness washed over him, and he stumbled. Before he could hit the ground, strong arms caught him. "You're pushing yourself too hard," Jace said, his voice laced with concern. Kai glared up at him. "I don't need you to catch me." "Clearly you do," Jace shot back, steadying him. "You're not invincible, Kai. You have to take care of yourself. For the baby, if not for you." Kai's glare softened slightly, but his pride refused to let him admit Jace was right. He shrugged out of Jace's hold, standing on his own. "I don't need a lecture," Kai muttered, sheathing the daggers. "And I don't need you collapsing on my watch," Jace countered. Kai turned to leave, but Jace's voice stopped him. "I know you hate me right now, Kai, but I need you to understand something. I'm not just doing this for the baby. I'm doing this for you." Kai froze, his back to Jace. For a moment he thought about responding, but he couldn't bring himself to. Instead, he walked away, leaving Jace standing alone in the moonlit training grounds. The next morning, Jace found a note slipped under his door. "If you're serious about making this right, prove it. Meet me at the southern border tonight. Kai." Jace's heart raced. He knew Kai well enough to understand that this wasn't just an invitation. It was a test, and he wasn't about to fail. The southern border was a dangerous area, rife with conflict and instability. When Jace arrived, he found Kai waiting for him, armed and ready. "You actually came," Kai said, his tone neutral. "You asked." "I came," Jace replied simply. Kai handed him a map. "The Red Vipers have been using this route to smuggle weapons. I want it shut down." Jace studied the map, nodding. "What's the plan?" "You follow my lead," Kai said. Jace smirked. "I wouldn't have it any other way." The mission was intense, but Kai and Jace worked seamlessly together. Their movements were synchronized, their trust implicit despite the tension between them. By the time they returned to the estate, the smuggling route had been destroyed, and the Red Vipers had suffered a significant blow. As they stood outside the mansion, Kai turned to Jace. "You did well," he said reluctantly. "So did you," Jace replied, his gaze softening. Kai hesitated, then added, "Maybe. Maybe there's a chance for you to make this right, but don't push your luck." Jace smiled, a flicker of hope lighting his eyes. "I'll take what I can get." For the first time, Kai felt the faintest glimmer of trust. It was fragile, like a thin layer of ice over a deep lake, but it was a start. And maybe, just maybe, they could build something from it. Chapter 6: Cracks in the Ice. The days bled into weeks, and the fragile truce between Kai and Jace grew stronger, though it remained unspoken. They operated like a pair of warriors who understood each other's strengths, moving in perfect harmony during missions, and working together to dismantle the Red Viper's operations. Still, the emotional distance between them lingered. Kai refused to let his guard down completely, though he couldn't deny that Jace's actions had started to chip away at his walls. One evening, Kai was in the garden leaning against a tree with a rare moment of peace. The cool breeze brushed against his skin as he looked up at the moonlit sky. His hand rested on his stomach, where the faint beginnings of a bump had started to show. "You look serene." Kai didn't turn at Jace's voice. "Don't flatter yourself." Jace chuckled softly, stepping closer. He held a tray with 2 steaming cups. "Thought you might like some tea." Kai raised an eyebrow but accepted one of the cups. "What's this about?" Jace shrugged, sitting on the bench nearby. "You've been pushing yourself hard. I figured you could use a break." Kai sipped the tea, its warmth spreading through him. "You're not going to lecture me about taking care of myself?" "Not tonight," Jace said, his voice unusually soft. "You already know what I'd say." Kai glanced at him, surprised by his restraint. For once, Jace wasn't overstepping, and it left Kai feeling unsettled. "Why are you doing all this?" Kai asked after a moment. "You could have just let me go. I would have taken care of the child, and you could have gone back to your perfect little empire." Jace looked at him, his expression unreadable. "Because I don't want just the child, Kai. I want you. I've wanted you from the start." Kai's chest tightened, but he forced himself to meet Jace's gaze. "You don't get to make decisions for me." "Not anymore." "I know," Jace said. "And I'm not trying to. I just want you to know that you're not alone in this. Whatever happens, I'll be here." Kai looked away, his emotions a whirlwind. He wanted to dismiss Jace's words, to remind him of his betrayal, but deep down he couldn't ignore the sincerity in his voice. "Don't make promises you can't keep," Kai said quietly. Jace smiled faintly. "I don't break my promises." The next day, a meeting was called. The heads of Jace's organization had gathered to discuss the fallout from their latest mission. Kai, though still technically an outsider, was present, an acknowledgement of his growing influence. The atmosphere was tense. The Red Vipers were weakened, but they weren't finished. Their leader, a man known only as Vance, had gone into hiding, and his next move was unpredictable. "We need to strike before he regroups," one of the lieutenants said. "And risk walking into a trap?" another countered. Kai's voice cut through the debate. "He's not regrouping. He's desperate." All eyes turned to him. Kai stepped forward, his tone confident. "Vance knows he's losing. He'll try something reckless, something that forces us to react. We don't need to strike. We need to wait and be ready to counter." Jace nodded, backing him up. "Kai's right. Desperation makes people predictable. We'll let him make the first move." The room fell silent, the weight of their decision sinking in. That night, Jace found Kai in the study, poring over maps and intel. "You didn't have to back me up," Kai said without looking up. Jace leaned against the door frame, arms crossed. "I didn't do it for you. I did it because you were right." Kai smirked. "You're learning." Jace stepped closer, his voice dropping. "I've always learned from you, Kai. You make me better." Kai froze, caught off guard by the raw emotion in Jace's voice. "I've done terrible things in my life," Jace continued, his gaze steady. "But meeting you, it made me want to be more. Not just a king, but someone worth standing beside you." Kai swallowed hard, his defenses cracking. "You're lucky I haven't killed you yet." Jace chuckled softly. "I am." The calm didn't last. 3 nights later, the estate was attacked. Explosions rocked the compound as Vance launched his final desperate assault. Kai and Jace fought side by side, their synergy stronger than ever, but the battle took a toll, and when Kai found himself cornered by a group of vipers, he felt a pang of fear for the first time. Before they could strike, Jace appeared, cutting through them with ruthless efficiency. He grabbed Kai's hand, his eyes blazing with determination. "I told you, I won't let anything happen to you." Kai didn't argue, letting Jace pull him to safety. By dawn, the estate was secure. The Red Vipers had been defeated. their forces decimated and Vance himself captured. Kai stood in the wreckage, exhaustion weighing on him. Jace approached, his expression equal parts relief and concern. "You're hurt," Jace said, noticing a gash on Kai's arm. "It's nothing," Kai replied. Jace didn't listen, gently taking Kai's arm and inspecting the wound. "You need to rest." Kai sighed but didn't resist. For once, he let Jace take care of him. As Jace wrapped the bandage, Kai studied him. He still didn't trust easily, but Jace's actions had spoken louder than his words ever could. "Maybe you're not a complete disaster," Kai muttered. Jace looked up, a smile tugging at his lips. "I'll take that as a compliment." Kai rolled his eyes but didn't deny it. For the first time, he allowed himself to consider the possibility of a future, not just for the child but for himself. And maybe, just maybe, that future included Jace. Chapter 7. A Kingdom Rebuilt. The morning sun rose over the estate, casting a golden glow on the aftermath of the battle. Though the scars of the attack were visible, charred walls, shattered windows, and lingering smoke, there was an undeniable sense of victory in the air. The Red Vipers were no more. Their leader, Vance, sat bound and defeated in the dungeons, his empire dismantled. Kai stood on the balcony of his room, gazing out at the horizon. His hand rested on his growing bump, the weight of everything that had happened pressing on him. But for the first time in months, he felt a strange sense of peace. Behind him, the door opened. Jace entered, his steps cautious. "You should be resting," Jace said softly, his gaze flicking to Kai's stomach. Kai didn't turn. "I've rested enough. There's still work to do." Jace approached, stopping a few feet away. "The estate can be rebuilt, the alliances can be reforged. But you're irreplaceable." Kai finally turned, his eyes locking with Jace's. "You always know the right thing to say, don't you?" Jace smiled faintly. "I've had good practice." Kai sighed, his expression softening. "I can't forgive what you did, Jace. Not completely, but you've proven yourself. You've shown me that you're willing to change." Jace's smile faded into something more serious. "I don't deserve forgiveness, Kai. But if you'll let me, I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you." Kai studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "You're not off the hook. You'll have to earn my trust every single day." "I wouldn't expect anything less," Jace said, his voice filled with quiet determination. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of rebuilding. Kai took an active role in restructuring Jace's empire, ensuring that its operations were as efficient and ethical as possible. Jace, true to his word, gave Kai the reins whenever he asked. It wasn't an easy adjustment for the Mafia King, but he adapted, for Kai, for their child, and for the future they were beginning to build together. Months later, the estate was fully restored. The once destroyed grounds now thrived with life, a symbol of renewal and hope. Kai stood in the garden, cradling his newborn son in his arms. The child's dark eyes mirrored Jace's, but his expression held a quiet strength that Kai recognized as his own. Jace approached, his steps cautious as always. "He's beautiful," he said, his voice filled with awe. Kai glanced up at him. "He's strong. He'll be a force to be reckoned with one day." Jace smiled. "Just like his parents." Kai hesitated, then handed the baby to Jace. Watching the Mafia King cradle their son with such care, Kai felt a warmth he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. "You've surprised me, Jace," Kai said quietly. "I didn't think you were capable of change. But you've proven me wrong." Jace looked at him, his gaze steady. "I had the best reason to change." Kai rolled his eyes but couldn't suppress a small smile. That evening, a celebration was held to mark their victory and the birth of the new heir. Allies and lieutenants gathered, raising their glasses in honor of the Phantom King and the Mafia King, united in power and purpose. As the night wore on, Kai found himself standing on the balcony once more, the cool breeze ruffling his hair. Jace joined him, a glass of wine in hand. "You're quiet tonight," he said. "Just thinking," Kai replied, his voice thoughtful. "About?" Kai turned to him, a rare softness in his expression. "About how far we've come, and how much further we have to go." Jace smiled, setting his glass down. "We'll face it together. You and me." Kai didn't respond immediately. Instead, he took Jace's hand, intertwining their fingers. "For our son's sake, I hope you're right," Kai said. "I am," Jace said firmly, "because no matter what comes next, I'll always bow to my queen." Kai snorted. Don't push it. Jace laughed, pulling Kai closer. For the first time, Kai allowed himself to relax into the embrace, resting his head against Jace's chest. The stars above them shone brightly, a promise of new beginnings and a future shaped by their choices. And for the first time in years, Kai felt like he could finally breathe. Epilogue. In the years that followed, the legend of the Phantom King and the Mafia King grew. Their reign was marked by unity and strength, a partnership forged in fire and tempered by trust. Their son, a fiery and fearless young boy, became the symbol of their legacy, a reminder that even in a world of darkness, light could emerge. And though the path had been treacherous, Kai and Jace found their way to each other, proving that even the most broken bonds could be mended with time, effort, and love.